Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. This one's going to mostly focus on some merchandise news and a few other little things at the end. So we'll start here with this. A new Aang statue has been announced by Dark Horse Direct. So that might be familiar to you, and that is because a few weeks ago we got the Korra statue also through Dark Horse Direct. So these I suppose are basically part of the same line. I guess they were designed with the same sort of constraints in place, which makes sense given that they're both sort of similarly sized statues, same price point as well. And because of that, I think a lot of what I have to say about this one is the same as what I said about the Korra statue, and that is that I think it's a nice looking statue. I actually prefer this one to the Korra because I think it more accurately depicts the character, in that I would be all over a pre-order for this figure if it was more reasonably priced, but it being $200 immediately has me being like, nope, this is not, in my mind, worth $200. Now, there might be all these reasons that people involved in the production of it can say as to why it's $200, but to me, I don't see it, because I look at something like this, a figure that I have, and I'm like, that does not feel like it is worth 4 times as much as what this is. Because I think the air effect is much nicer looking on this than it is on that. And while there are, some aspects that I feel like are kind of like, feel slightly more deluxe in a way on that one, it doesn't feel like it's 4 times as much. And that's the problem in terms of that sort of quality to, value ratio, is that you need to get it right. And to me, this doesn't do enough. I would expect this to be like way crazier for the price that it actually is. Some people will say, oh, but there's Momo included as well. I'm kind of like, Momo's included with a lot of Aangs. Like the original Aang Funko Pop came with Momo. Like, basically all of the toy lines have an Aang that also has Momo with him. So I don't think it's too fancy that this has happened before. Similarly, like, I have the QMX Aang figure, the statue, that also comes with Momo. So there's nothing particularly unique about that. This is the obvious place where a Momo would be included. So it's the same things as before. I think it's too highly priced for the statue not feeling like it's worth that much. Because it is through Dark Horse Direct, it means you're very limited with where you can get it from, and there's all this sort of restrictions in place because of that, which is the other point, which is that I'm from Ireland, so I can't even order this. Now, technically, I could go through a few hoops and order it through a UK address and, get it here eventually, but that would mean I basically have to pay, like, double, like, tax, customs on it, basically double shipping. And suddenly the $200 plus shipping figure is probably more like $250 plus shipping, making it even less of a value proposition, given that I already at the standard price don't think it's good enough. Let's go through some of the other pictures, because look, it is nice. I do overall like it. It feels very characterful for Aang, but yeah, it just, you see the paint is pretty nice, but it just, the details, little details here are kind of quite nice. But if that's all we can really say is just that, like, the paint seems slightly better quality than a figure like a quarter of the price, that's to me a bit of a problem. When they have a line of statues that are quite detailed, like the Katara that they have here, feels quite nice. Like, obviously, it's maybe not going for as extreme of a pose as they're maybe going for with the Aang. But again, it's like, those statues are more than 3 times the price of this. And I'm kind of like, why can't you just do this Aang on a base like that? Smaller scale, obviously, I get it. Like, this is 12 inches tall. This is only 6 inches tall. But to me, it doesn't feel like this sculpt is so crazy that, like, it needs to be twice as big to execute it. Because are we getting an Aang in this line? There's Katara and Zuko, but not Aang and Korra. Which is the other point. Like, why is Korra, like, exclusive, effectively, to this Dark Horse Direct thing? Why is there no purchasable from anywhere Korra statue. Are we getting one or not? Because like there's not much book 4 Korra merch, so this feels kind of bad that like there's barely any Korra merch that's not just like basic t-shirts and stuff like that. So I really am not clear what they're doing here. They have 2 separate statue lines, and I'm not sure what's going on with the character selection for each. In that, I think when they announced the Aang and the Katara and Zuko, they did say like it would be a series. So I'm assuming like with this, we're at least getting air, so Aang, and earth, I guess, Toph, to go with the water and fire. But beyond that, like, are they continuing? And then what's the deal with this? Will they always be $200 figures here? I'm not really sure what the whole idea is necessarily. Other thing we need to get into here is just a bit of a random point here that is mentioned in the description for this. Dark Horse and Nickelodeon are back with the all-new Avatar The Last Airbender Aang statue. In this impeccable polyresin statue, the 82nd Avatar demonstrates his airbending abilities. The rest is not important. Aang is apparently the 82nd Avatar. We never knew this before. This has never, in my mind, been officially stated about how many avatars there are, because it's always been a speculation topic that went from, okay, Roku said like you've mastered the element 1,000 times, so I guess that means there's like 1,000 avatars, but that went out the window when we found out about beginnings and like the origin of the avatar, and that the avatars only existed for like the last 10,000 years of the Avatar universe. So basic math means that doesn't work, because that puts the average age of an avatar at 10, which is theoretically possible, but it creates this very dark thing where it means a lot of avatars had to have died very, very young. Not really likely to happen. So there being more like 100 avatars makes much more sense. And in my mind, you probably, the logical number for me probably would have been somewhere in the region of like 120 to 150. But I get it with Avatar, and you're saying that people can live longer. You're going in the opposite direction, putting the average like over 100 years, which is quite interesting. Like obviously Kyoshi on her own is going to bring that average up. Even Aang is going to bring that average up, and it obviously highlights that there are at least a handful of other avatars who probably live to be like 120, maybe even longer. So I'm not sure how official this is one thing, because this is ultimately just marketing material rather than it being like official canon. They could absolutely have just looked up information on Aang and wanted to be like, hey, let's get technical with Aang. And they just found somewhere that said this randomly. Because, like, I keep up to date with this. I feel like I would know if this had been officially announced before, that, like, Aang's 82, Korra's 83. But I hadn't up until I saw this post. So I'm really wondering what's like happened here. Is this potentially some sort of a thing where they have taken information they found on like maybe like a fan section of the wiki, where like a notable fanfic or something like that happens to number the avatars in this way? Or it maybe actually is possible that Avatar Studios, as they're planning things, because they're planning to do multiple eras, want to be more technical with the information and clarify this sort of stuff. And maybe Aang is now officially numbered in here as 82, and they're committing to the idea that there are 83 known avatars in the 10,000 and like 3 years or something like that. That's fine with me. I just wish there wasn't the doubt about this. I just wish there wasn't that, well, either it's super hyper official because Avatar Studios is doing stuff right now, but we don't know if they're doing that right now, or Dark Horse have just made some weird error where they just happen to associate the number 82 with Aang for whatever reason, and it's actually an error. I wish there was somewhere in the middle where we actually just knew what the situation was. Still, it's interesting to discuss, but anyway. Next, McFarlane have finally announced, I guess, their wave 2 of 7-inch figures, and it's Sokka and Book 1 Aang again. Sokka, cool, fine, great. You needed him eventually, fine. But why is the wave mate for him another Book 1 Aang? With the gimmick being just that, hey look, this one comes with Momo and also has a smiley face. Let's talk about the Aang here. Momo looks fine. The core figure of McFarlane 7-inch Book 1 Aang is nice. But I didn't feel they got the face right in the initial release. I didn't feel like they got the face right here either. I just think that's too much of a weird grin, that they should just keep it simple. Like, in a way, this. I actually, in a way, like. I'm not asking this with this figure for them to do anything more fancy with the face. I think they got it perfectly right there. But for some reason with the action figures, they feel the need to go for these really exaggerated expressions, and I don't understand why. So, to me, this is just like a pointless figure in so many ways. Why isn't this Book 3 Aang? Why isn't this anything different? I don't understand. The Sokka, we'll address the elephant in the room in just a second. Outside of that, which we'll get to, I actually think this is a quite nicely done Sokka. The color is on, like, his outfit seem alright. He comes with the kind of, the club thing that he uses, the nice weapon. The boomerang holster seems quite nice. You can see the boomerang on the back. That's fine. The problem, obviously, is the skin color. So let's open this up here properly. So everyone has pointed this out in all the posts that McFarlane has put up about this. What have you done to the character? What's going on here? His skin is way too light. And I agree. I definitely agree. The color that they've used here on his face, ears, neck, and the bit of the chest that you can see is way off. Now, immediately, there's like a little bit of a sort of like, question of like, okay, well, the color they're using for his hand seems a lot more in line with where it should be. So is this just, say, like a prototype that the face is hand painted? And because of that, like, the paint that they use is slightly different, and so the colors don't quite match because of that. The other thing you can tell is that there is pretty intense lighting. You can see clearly in the picture that some of the lightness on his face is clearly heavy lights where they're taking this picture. I don't think that accounts for everything, but I think it's making it seem way more extreme of an issue than it probably is. Another point I will bring up here, just for anyone like kind of really trying to go in on McFarlane for this, is that they've already put out a Sokka figure in their smaller scale line. They've already put out a Katara in their smaller scale line, and they got the skin tone of the Water Tribe characters correct in my mind. I didn't see anyone complaining about the skin tone of those figures from the same company. I can't imagine that they will have purposefully decided to take this road with this character of making the skin lighter when they've already shown that they can do it correctly before. I think this is probably just a case where they happen to have chosen maybe the one picture from what is likely going to be a group of pictures when they finally put this figure up for pre-order, and this one might be one of the more extreme ones that shows it off. I'm going to be pretty interested to see, like, when they maybe do show other shots, and there's one where his face maybe isn't so head on to the camera and the lights, if it looks as bad as it does here. It does say in the picture at the bottom, prototypes shown, final product subject to change. And if there's anything that's going to change with this, is they're going to make sure, I think, to get the skin tone right. But I think there is stuff that makes it clear that it is going to be right. One, his hands, I think, is the color you probably need. And they've done it before on the other figure, which I don't think anyone had a problem with. I think this is just a prototype and some bad lighting, and that's what the situation is. For me, a bigger problem is just, where is the variation? Where's the variety of characters in this line? I'm a little bit worried that we haven't seen Katara yet. Given that, like, to me, your big three for ATLA early ATLA, because they're all doing book 1 stuff, should be Aang, Zuko, and Katara. And I think Sokka obviously is part of that, but I think Sokka is your 4th character. So, to me, if the next figure that they announce is not Katara, I think we've got a bit of a problem on our hands with this line. And I would be worried that they're maybe afraid to do female characters in this line. Again, the smaller scale line already has Katara, already has Toph. So it's not that there's just a flat out unwillingness at all from McFarlane Toys to do female characters. So I'm hoping it is just a case where this is just a very slow released line where they happen to be doing a lot of redos of book 1 Aang, and they're only doing 2 figures a wave, and it just means that unfortunately Katara ends up being like wave 3 instead of probably should have been wave 1 or 2. But we'll have to wait and see. Either we'll all have been maybe over exaggerating things and Katara was always coming, or there is actually a bit of a problem with what's going on here. And it's unfortunate because none of the lines have been, I think, firing on all cylinders. Diamond Select seems to have more or less stopped doing figures. It seems like they're going to put out their wave, 5 or 6, the one with Zuko and Iroh in it. And the last we've heard about that line is that someone asked them about it, and they basically said that line is sort of like, we're monitoring the market to see if we'll do more kind of type thing. So the Diamond Select figures feel like they're maybe done. Loyal subjects are a bit difficult to get, and the QC on them isn't great, but they seem to have the best character variety. McFarlane, the 7-inch scale, is probably the best overall sort of figure in terms of articulation plus look, but it seems to be the worst schedule, cadence of release, character selection going on. So nothing properly correct, and then in all of this, no Korra. And then one of the only pieces of Korra merchandise coming out is a direct release limited edition $200 statue. Now, admittedly, we still have the Pop-Up Parade Korra, which hasn't been announced properly yet. That should be hopefully announced soon-ish. We're still waiting. Every week they make announcements, but none of them are Pop-Up Parade Korra, so that'll happen eventually, and that will be a more affordable figure, but it hasn't come out yet. So mixed on this one here, very, very mixed, and I'm not feeling super strongly about a lot of the action figure lines these days, but hopefully once someone announces Korra and they get going again, that can be an improvement. Because say like they finally do a bigger wave of like the smaller scale figures, because they've already done Iroh and Toph now, they pretty much have to be getting onto, I suppose, either doing the book 3 variations of the characters or going on to doing the likes of Azula, Suki, Mei, Ty Lee. I'll say it again, I think those are the 3 characters to look out for in terms of the lines of any merchandise basically that is going to feature, like, say, Mei, Suki, Ty Lee, are the ones where like they're willing to go for the characters beyond just the obvious main cast. And so far, no action figures for those 3 characters, but Funko have done pops for those characters. So that's interesting to note. Next up, this book. Legend of Korra Book 4 Balance Art of the Animated Series. So the re-release of the art book, the 5 out of 6 deluxe edition, has been delayed. So the release date has gone from, I think, being the 12th of July to now being the 26th of July. So this has been pushed back by 2 weeks. And this is one of those ones where, like, you can see, I think, a bit of a difference between the delay here versus all of the crazy delays Patterns in Time has been getting and stuff like that. This pretty much consistently every month has been pushed back by like a month every single time. So a book only getting, say, like a 2-week delay, and I think it's one of only maybe like 2 delays that this book has ever received, if this might actually be the first delay for it. That to me feels just like, okay, we have to make a minor movement on this for valid reasons, versus we have no clue why this book has basically been delayed from April all the way into November with all like 6, 7, 8 delays. No clue why that has actually happened. This is much more understandable in terms of just positioning a book in release. It's still coming out in basically the same month it was always kind of meant to. We're relatively close, so this is probably the final delay, and we're basically exactly a month away from this book. And once it does come out, it does put a lot of pressure on Dark Horse to finally get around to like properly announcing, acknowledging Beasts of the Four Nations, because the deluxe edition, of course, a lot of people are going to have just one thing left for the collection. What is the 6th book? It is Beasts of the Four Nations, but what is going on with that? We need an answer. Last little bit of news is just here. Yeah, I covered this when I did my speculation for the Netflix show. It's just to highlight that there is a final some bits of casting news that are kind of scattered, not fully confirmed just yet. So just the idea that they have 3 actors where they don't know the characters. There are 6 characters where they don't know the actors, and then like so far they know that there are like 131, key characters, I suppose, in a way, in the show. The significant thing is obviously this list here: May, Ty Lee, King Boomy, Jet, Karuk, Arnuk, and Yagoda. So Arnuk and Yagoda are no real, there's nothing interesting there. They're obviously going to be a part of it. You have to have the chief of the Northern Water Tribe. Qatar's healing has to be involved, so Yagoda's going to be involved. That's fine. The Karuk stuff we also already know about. May and Ty Lee is interesting because, of course, they're not in book 1 at all, but it makes sense to bring them up a little bit. But what's interesting about it is going to be, does that mean they'll be involved in sort of like the Azula tease at the end, or will they be involved in a bigger way? Will there be more scenes? Will there be Zuko flashbacks that involve all the sort of fire teens when they were younger? Who knows? Probably the most interesting ones in terms of where the series is going in a way is probably the King Boomy and Jet inclusion, because they are characters where like their episodes in book 1 are very much like character introduction episodes, and there's a lot of them in book 1. What have they included? What have they not included? So we have Suki already. We know there's going to be Suki stuff, so that means the events of the Warriors of Kyoshi are going to be included in some form or another. The inclusion of King Boomy here means that, to some extent, the King of Amashu will be here in some form or another. And then Jet being here also confirms that, okay, 110 is here in some way. So it maybe suggests that a lot of the other episodes where there are kind of character introductions, those characters will be left out. The most significant one for me would just be that we don't know about a Zhong yet. And that's probably the one major kind of plot significant character who might not be here. So that's maybe one thing to look out for. Otherwise, we're talking about the likes of, say, like Haru, Tyro, the Mechanist, Teo, those type of characters who I think you can do without. And it will be more of a case of like including them just for the sake of including them and not because they're important really to the story. But it's interesting to consider. Again, if you want more of that discussion, I did a video speculating along those lines a few days back. I'll link it in the description. So, there is the news. So what are your thoughts on new expensive Aang exclusive statue to go along with the Korra? McFarlane 7-inch wave 2 and all of the issues here of like repeat characters being a problem. What are your thoughts on how they did Sokka's skin color here, and will they correct it before release? A delay for the book 4 art book redo, and some casting news before I suppose they're going to be getting ready, I suppose, for some major reveals with this show. So that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.